Hello there, I'm Tanya, and you are listening to Human and Holy. Today's episode is airing in honor of Yud Shvat, which is the day that the Lubavitcher Rebbe accepted the role of leader of the Chabad movement. And so in honor of that, I speak to Sara Blau, and we discuss the Maamer, the Chassidic discourse of V'atah Tetzaveh, which is the last piece, the last Maamer that was distributed before the Lubavitcher Rebbe passed away. And because of that, it holds a lot of significance in the Chabad world, and I think also beyond, on what leadership is, because a leader of a huge movement leaves his students and his disciples and his Chassidim with this piece of work, and within it there are so many deep messages about what it means to develop our own inner leadership, how to move forward after losing the physical presence of a leader that guided us in so many ways, and how to move forward towards redemption. Like, what is this generation's role in the world? This is such a fascinating topic to me, a fascinating piece of Chassidic work that I personally have learned time and time and time again, finding new answers in it each time. In today's conversation, we speak about finding that inner sense of leadership, and also how the previous generation was asked for a lot of practical self-sacrifice within their Judaism, and this generation is asked for something else, asked for a self-actualization that allows us to channel the divine in the most real, chosen, joyful, integrated way. Today's episode is brought to you by Toveedo. Toveedo is an online subscription platform that creates Jewish content for children of all ages. They have cartoons, they have action videos, they have Jewish concerts, they have so much in there. I am so delighted to partner with Toveedo because I'm genuinely extremely passionate about the work that they're doing. The media that we show our children has such a strong impact on their makeup and their inner worlds, and having a platform that really creates beautiful Jewish content aligned with Jewish values in this joyful way is just such a gift. It was created by a set of parents that did not have the right Jewish media to offer their children, and they created Toveedo. They saw a dearth in the market, and I'm so grateful for them that they did. The Jewish world is better for it. Check them out for yourself, gift it to a friend, your grandchildren. We have a code for you, HH10. It's a small way to support our work. Thank you, Toveedo, for bringing our work into the world. Today's episode is also brought to you by Zelda Hair. Zelda Hair is a wig company that makes beautiful wigs at affordable prices, but even deeper than that, it's the woman behind the brand and the way that she is revolutionizing the conversation about wig covering. She has a podcast where she speaks to women about their experience in covering their hair, how they have moved through these struggles, either just like the physical struggles, the emotional struggles, the spiritual blockages, not really understanding why you're covering your hair, and just like really talks about it in a very honest way. Zelda has had her own journey with hair covering, and it's very meaningful to me to see a woman leading a brand that is all about hair covering with the depth and the mitzvah as kind of the core value behind it. Check out their work. All the links are in the show notes. Thank you, Zelda Hair, for bringing our work into the world. Sara, welcome to Human and Holy. I'm so excited to have you here tonight. It feels fun to like do something in the evening. It feels like cozy, different. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like we made tea. It's just like it's a cozier feeling, and I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and the Maamer, the Chassidic discourse that we're discussing, I was thinking about it right before we got on, and I was remembering that I learned it for the first time in your classroom in 11th grade, and I just felt like it was like so full circle to be here today discussing it and like teasing out the themes and its relevance today.
It is really full circle because I so remember you.
Yeah.
Your creativity, your ideas, your passion.
Thank you.
It's amazing to see how you've evolved like this.
Thank you. And it's fun to like get to have this type of conversation with a former teacher. Literally, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll hit our topic today.
Okay. So my friends call me Sara Blau, even though on my books and articles I'll say Sara Blau. So you can call me Sara.
Okay.
I'm first and foremost a mother, a wife, Baruch Hashem, and I work in Beis Rivka High School. I do the extracurricular programming, and I also have a lot of personal extracurricular programming, like hobbies besides for what I do with the girls. But I write children's books. I write books for women. I have 2 out. One is called Close to You. One is called Thoughts, Dreams, and I'm working on one now as well about davening. And I have 30 children's books as well.
Wow.
And I'm very passionate about using whatever gifts Hashem has given us to teach, to inspire, to share the beauty and light of Torah and Chassidus.
Beautiful. I'm so curious to know what inspired you to get into children's books. 30 children's books is like, I love writing children's books. That's not like I dabbled in it for a minute.
It's funny because when I was in 5th grade, we had to write this book for like a book fair.
Yeah.
And I just knew I was going to write children's books. I loved it so much. I knew it.
It was so much fun.
And then when it actually happened, I was at home at night. My husband was working in yeshiva at the time. My oldest, and I already had 2.
Okay.
They were sleeping, and I was very bored and lonely at night. It was really not good. It was not good.
Bored and lonely, a hard combination.
I also didn't have like a smartphone yet, so I wasn't scrolling. Like I wasn't just filling the void with like endless scrolling, and then the night was over. I needed to do something.
Oh, I love that.
And I just started writing. I had this idea, and I sent it to like my nieces and my sister-in-laws, and they were like, send it to a publisher.
That's amazing.
So I did. I sent books off. I literally went into a bookstore. I looked at the back at like different publishers. I didn't know anyone besides Farachai, and I was like, I need ideas. I was like, oh, Judaica Press, okay.
Judaica Press, Google it.
Actually.
That's amazing.
And I submitted it, and I davened so hard for it to get accepted. Like,
right.
Yeah, Baruch
Make
Hashem.
it happen.
So.
The magic that happens when you don't have a smartphone and you're lonely and bored, right?
Yeah. And you know what the truth is, for better or for worse, writing also became almost like therapeutic for me. Like I know some of my books and I'm like, oh yeah, like I remember when that happened, you know, that was after that miscarriage, or that was after this other challenge I was going through. And I kind of also feel like Hashem gives us our unique skill set and personality, and it also works for us. Like they're also tools to tap into to help us overcome whatever we're going through.
Yeah.
Painting, writing, these things are not only soulful expressions for me, but I need it.
Right.
I need it.
They're tools to like manage life.
Yeah.
The emotions of life.
Right.
Yeah.
And also to sometimes just be practical. Like some of the children's books were just like, you know, I remember waiting outside with my kids for the bus, and it was before we got like a link on Glimpse of where the bus was.
Oh, okay. I don't even know what you're talking about because I don't live in New York,
okay,
but
so
I know what you're talking about.
When you wait for
you get the app and there's
they send you a link and then you can follow where the bus is, and when it's 3 blocks away, you could just.
Right.
But so I lived in an apartment building, so it's not like I could just stand at the door. I had to get dressed and go downstairs and wait with my 2 kids downstairs, and it could be a half an hour. And I remember once I was just like going nuts with them, and it was a very windy day. And I noticed like the trees were swaying, so I told my kids like, let's pretend to be trees. And they like start swaying, and then I was like, let's pretend to be a car. And then I was like, oh, this is a children's book.
Yeah, you're like,
and that's, you know, one of my books about like glad to be me, about pretending to be all sorts of things or whatever. So behind every book, there's always a story. Each one of my books has a story. Sometimes it's just a Chassidic concept. Like from Tanya, I'm like, this needs to be a book.
Wow. By the way, I think that like sometimes children's books can hold the deepest truths because it's taking these huge concepts, these huge truths of life, and being able to distill it to the level of a child is a very like powerful tool to be able to like is a very powerful thing to be able to do. Like you often as an adult like uncover these layers in the children's books and you're like, oh, I didn't see that when I was a kid, you know?
It's true. Like Mrs. Sternberg actually told me she gave a shir in Simcha and she brought my children's book, I Could Be B'Simcha, and she went through it. Like we could be happy when we do something for someone else. We could be happy when we do a mitzvah. Like
they're deep, for sure.
Also, some things are like totally not explicit. Like in my book, I Could Be a Gibar. There's 4 scenarios of like overcoming a challenge and being strong. And I did each one a different one of the 4 elements that the Alter Rebbe talks about in Tanya. One is Eish, one is Ruach, one is Maim, and one is Afer. So you don't know that, but the first challenge is a kid is getting angry.
Right.
That's Eish. Eish is fire. It's anger. And how do we have Gevura in that?
Cool.
And each scenario corresponds to a different one. So yeah, there's a lot of hidden stuff.
There's like hidden secrets. I know. Yeah, I was recently wondering if Yassi and Label are Nefesh Hapamas, Nefesh Lekes, or Gates Ahar, Yates or Tov. Right?
Oh my gosh, we have to ask Mrs. Rosenthal.
I know, like me and my husband went deep down that rabbit hole of like analyzing all the books, and we're like, no, I think that this is what she meant by it. Even the fact that Label's name is Heart, Lab.
It's so cool.
Right? I mean, I don't know. We might have like made it up, but yeah, 100%. You start seeing like all these hidden
intents, and some things like God
interpretation.
Like,
exactly.
like it just works. Some things are even fun. Like the 4 seasons. I'll like want each put the 4 seasons in each of the different scenarios.
Just like, why not?
Yeah.
Right.
Just like stuff.
You're just like creating a universe, and it's so much fun. Okay, well, I love that you have so many different creative outlets, and I really admire how many different things you're doing, which is incredible. And obviously also educating and being in that space as well. So this Maamer that we're going to be talking about is the last Chassidic discourse that was distributed by the Rebbe. So historically, it's a very significant Maamer and talk. And I think a lot of people see it as like the will and testament of the Rebbe to the next generation. And I think even for anyone who isn't Chabad, it like holds just like a lot of significance, a leader passing on like some type of truth to his students and his Chassidim on how to be after his loss and how to carry on. So can you share a little bit about the Maamer? And we're going to you can share like the beginning point that comes up at first, and we'll just kind of meander through it together.
Sure. So I actually had a thought as we were talking through the children's book that it reminds me of a point in the Maamer.
Okay.
Because you said like to take something so deep and distill it for the level of the child. It's actually greater than someone who's so smart but can't bring it down.
Yeah.
And even though it's all the way at the end of the Maamer, it's a very big foundation of the Maamer. That it's greater, it's higher, and it's deeper when you could bring it down lower. And the context in the Maamer is we're talking about 2 different levels and ability of revealing your essence. One of them is we're talking about when you reveal your essence, your ma'ar, during a time of Mesiras Nefesh. In Russia, I mean, there's no shortage of time periods when Jews have gone on Mesiras Nefesh. And then the Rebbe introduces us to a new and kind of revolutionary type of revealing your essence that the Rebbe says is greater than Mesiras Nefesh. Like, what could be greater than Mesiras Nefesh?
Right.
Mesiras Nefesh is giving up your life for the sake of Hashem.
Yeah.
Mesiras Nefesh is the greatest expression of your essence. What could be greater than that?
Right.
And the Rebbe explains that it's true Mesiras Nefesh is great, but Mesiras Nefesh negates your conscious experience. It negates your Sechel and your Middos, your thoughts and your feelings. You can't have your feelings online and go Mesiras Nefesh. It makes no sense. It doesn't make sense emotionally to give up your life. Someone has a family, children, you wouldn't go Mesiras Nefesh.
Right.
It's not logical. So the neshama, the essence that we reveal during a time of Mesiras Nefesh is great, it's huge, but it negates our insides, our psyche. Contrast that with an era, which we can go into and explain more soon, of not Mesiras Nefesh, of living in America, of living with Harchava, the Rebbe calls it, expansiveness. We're doing so well. We have all these healing modalities. We have people can quit their 9 to 5 and come up with creative ways to have abundance, right? And then to reveal your essence then, it's greater. You know why? Because it's like explaining a deep concept to a little kid. It's taking your essence and bringing it to your Sechel, to your logic and your emotional experience. Your psyche's not offline. Your psyche's online. It's an alignment of my conscious experience and my inner core. I don't have to put a big X on my feelings and my thoughts. I could reveal my deepest essence and have my conscious experience match that. And that's greater. It's like the greater professor who could bring it down lower.
Right.
It's such a great essence. It's a level from Hashem's essence that it could even be experienced in my heart and in my mind.
Yeah. And I think that like even the fact that in that Maamer, the Rebbe goes so far as to almost critique the previous generation's Mesiras Nefesh, that you didn't see it expressed in the same way when they came back to America, that like it wasn't something that was like an integrated part of who they were, like people who gave up their life for their Judaism, and then as soon as things calmed down and went back to normal, they struggled to like really experience their Judaism on the level that you would imagine they would if they were willing to sacrifice their life to preserve Jewish practice.
Because that's the whole point. It was never really them.
Yeah.
It was, I kind of think about it like like adrenaline. You know those stories of a woman who could like lift her car to save her child, but like you're not gonna knock on her door the next day and be like, could you carry my washing machine and dryer? Because it was an abnormal adrenaline rush.
100%.
Mesiras Nefesh is our soul's adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
So in Russia, they went on Mesiras Nefesh because their soul like shut down their Sechel and Middos, like we were talking about before, and it's like, I'm in charge here.
Right.
You're gonna, one of the my favorite mashalim that I like to think about with Mesiras Nefesh and in general, this concept of essence, and I heard it from Mrs. Sternberg, who I actually mentioned before, but she taught me a lot. And
Mrs. Esther Sternberg?
Bracha Sternberg.
Oh, okay.
She taught V'atah Tetzaveh also, so we prepared together, and she gave this example. And this actually goes back to earlier in the Maamer, where he describes different soul levels. So our soul is made up of 5 levels. The first level is Nefesh, which is the lowest level. It's like serving God through Kabbalah Sal because Hashem said so. The next level is Ruach, which is my heart, serving God because I love serving Hashem. The next level is Neshama, which is intellect, understanding Hashem. The next level is Chaya, which is higher than intellect. It's faith, because a part of our soul that sees and believes God. And then there's Yechida, which is the essence. So taking these 5 levels, here's the mashal. Imagine someone came over to you and said, if you do not become a dog, I'm going to kill you. So on a Nefesh level, you would say, my mommy doesn't let me become a dog, so I can't. That's Kabbalah Sal. Ruach is, I love being a human. I don't want to be a dog. Neshama is, I understand that the value of a human over a dog. I don't want to be a dog. Chaya is like belief. I believe I'm a person. I don't believe I want to be a dog. And Yechida, essence, in the mashal is, become a dog or I'm going to kill you. What's your answer?
I'd rather.
It's not I'd rather.
Right, there's no
I can't become a dog. I'm a person.
Yeah.
So on a level of Mesiras Nefesh, if somebody comes over to a Jew and says, convert or I'm going to kill you, I could say Nefesh, Hashem said, my mommy's, I could, when it comes to Mesiras Nefesh, no level of the neshama works. The essence pops out. I'm a Jew. I can't become not a Jew. When your essence is activated, you can't disconnect from your Judaism. So going back to contrasting Mesiras Nefesh, or the Rebbe even comparing, his Chassidim who had Mesiras Nefesh and Rashab, and then when it came to America and they had freedom of religion, suddenly, their whole allegiance and passion kind of disintegrated. It's because their essence popped out and said, I can't disconnect from Hashem.
Right.
But it never was brought into their inner experience. And in this last Maamer, the Rebbe is saying, it's based on the pasuk of V'atah Tetzaveh, right? And in that pasuk, there's like a whole bunch of questions and contradictions. And one of the things that the Rebbe emphasizes is that when we take the time to make sure our feelings, our thoughts are aligned with our essence, that it's not something that negates our conscious experience, then it really lasts. Then it's really ours, because it's not like that adrenaline rush. And on a deeper level, it's what we're contrasting here, and it's very funny because in Yiddishkeit, you often find that things could be relative. You could have a grape is smaller than an orange, right? The orange is bigger than the grape, but then the orange becomes smaller than a cantaloupe. Depends what you're comparing it to. So in the Maamer, we discuss different levels of something being external, based on an external circumstance, like Mesiras Nefesh, when Mesiras Nefesh is demanded, versus an internal experience. And there's a series of different external, internal, and what the Rebbe is driving at is, people, Chassidim, I want you to have the ultimate internal experience. I don't want you to be serving Hashem because of any external circumstance. Not even the non-Jew who threatens to kill you if you don't go Mesiras Nefesh. I want you to own your Yiddishkeit. I want you to take such an active part in it that if you dissect and cut open an essence and you saw what it would want, right? If you asked your neshama what it wanted and you went inside your own psyche, your own sechel, your own middos, they would be aligned. Mm-hmm. And the Rebbe says this is something doable for our generation. It's doable. We could want essence. We could experience, in our conscious experience, wanting to just connect to God's essence, revealing our essence.
Right. And like wanting mitzvahs as people. I think the Rebbe was like really describing this generational shift. Like, I do think that you see this generation intuitively searching for that. It's like this Mashiach awareness and like a different way of looking at things, where that sacrifice mentality, which was very much necessary for a different generation and time, is no longer something that people even want in their lives, but people are searching for like that integrated Judaism, that authentic Judaism, that like I myself desire and am a participant in every element of my Judaism in a very real way. I'm curious to know where you think that we have resistance to like really shifting from like really shedding this like perspective of like, no, just like annul who you are, sacrifice who you are, override the system, right? Like that experience, which was so necessary and which preserved Judaism, to this new experience of like fully bridging all parts of who I am with my Judaism so that I could experience my essence as a person and my personality and my hobbies and all of these different areas. Like, where do you think our resistance is to making that shift?
So for me, understanding the process was very helpful, which means I know I'm not answering your question directly, but if we go back to the Maamer and what I was saying before about external and internal, we see it, the journey, and understanding the journey and the process really helps me. Mm-hmm. And I'll explain to you what I mean. At one point in the Maamer, even before we introduced this idea of like Mesiras Nefesh versus Harchava and integration, we have our first set of comparing internal and external. And the Rebbe says, this is a Maamer, a Purim Katan Maamer, and the Rebbe's describing, and it's based on a Maamer of the previous Rebbe, and he's describing the fact that it says in the Megillah that Purim time, mm-hmm. that the Kibel HaYehudim es asher hachelu lases, that the Yidden accepted what they began. Mm-hmm. They accepted the Torah in a real way. Purim time. When did they begin to accept the Torah? When was the first time we accepted the Torah? When the Jews accepted it at Matan Torah. Mm-hmm. When we said to Hashem, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will accept. And the Rebbe says, if you think about it, it's a dvar pella, it's a wondrous thing. How could you say that Purim time was more real than Matan Torah? Matan Torah, the Yidden were on such a high level. Right. They just experienced Kriyas Yam Suf. They were at such a high level. Purim time, they just went to a party. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was exile. Right. Jews were totally not connected. Right. They were totally enjoying the king's. So how could it be that it was more real, Purim time, than Matan Torah? Mm-hmm. The reason why it was more real is because Matan Torah, the Jews accepted the Torah, but what did Hashem do? He literally lifted a mountain over their head and said, if you don't accept it, I'm dropping this on you. It was forced. Mm-hmm. There was an external reason. Yeah. Now, even though Chassidic explains it was a mountain of love and he completely loved, Hashem love-bombed them, right? It's like when a guy completely, gives you so much and you like can't help but falling in love, right? So the Yidden couldn't help but accept the Torah, but still there was a level of it being external, mm-hmm. logical, like a reason. Externally motivated. Yeah. As opposed to Purim, where the Yidden chose to go on Mesiras Nefesh. So when you compare during the time of the Gzeira, when, it's interesting because in the Megillah it says that Haman wanted to kill Yehudim. And the Maamer explains that meant he only wanted to kill those that were Maida, that acknowledged that there's a God, that were living their lives as Jews, which means any Jew that would have decided to negate their Judaism, they could have been saved. Mm-hmm. Not one Jew did that. So remember, like the orange is smaller than the can, it's a little bit bigger than the grape. Compared to Matan Torah, compared to Hashem holding a mountain above our heads, going a Mesiras Nefesh is internal. Because it's they decided to go Mesiras Nefesh. And throughout the entire history, anyone who chose to go Mesiras Nefesh, compared to Matan Torah, has the advantage of you chose it. And that's where the Rebbe comes in with the whole Chiddush and says, wait, it's true, Mesiras Nefesh is amazing, and it's the greatest expression of your essence and your soul. And then he kind of almost shocks you, and he says, but there's something greater. And that greater thing is, not only don't you have someone holding a mountain over your head, not only don't you have something external like Mesiras Nefesh, which, activates your adrenaline when you're sitting on a fine day, you're going swimming, you're doing the things you love, and you can be in touch with your essence, that's greater. And now back to your question about the resistance, it almost is too good to be true. It almost seems too good to be true that really, it's greater than Mesiras Nefesh. Living a life of abundance and choosing essence, and also, we almost don't believe that we could do it. We almost don't believe that it's in the realm of a possibility, but the Rebbe's like, you got this. Your entire generation, right? He says that, like, the V'atah Rebbe was the first one that we know in the Maamer, that he says, I don't want your Gan Eden, I don't want your rewards, I don't want anything, I want you. And the Rebbe says the fact that we know that about the first Chabad Rebbe means that we could do it too. It means, there was the famous Sicha that the Rebbe said about the Rebbe Rashab as a young child wanting Hashem to appear to him. And what did the Rebbe say? From this we learn that even children could want essence. We have to believe in it the way the Rebbe believes in us. The Rebbe's like, I could inspire you, I could give you energy and kayach, but you got to do this on your own. You got to believe that you could want essence.
Was there a shift for you in this? Like you described, like the answer to the resistance is like seeing the process in the Maamer and like seeing how beautiful the process is and how much deeper the experience is of accessing essence in this way that you're describing. But was there a process for you of moving from that perspective of sacrifice?
Completely.
There was. Okay.
Completely.
I'd love to hear.
But the process started earlier.
Okay.
Which means, often in Torah, there's the event that happened, and then there's what it represents. Or there's the person, and then there's what it represents. There's Yaakov and Esav, and then there's, Esav the concept, and Yaakov the concept. So even though historically we're talking about different time periods, we're talking about Matan Torah, we're talking about Purim during the time of the Gzeira, or, sorry, excuse me, please. So even though historically we're talking about different time periods, right? We're talking about Matan Torah, Exhibit A. Purim during the Gzeira, Exhibit B. Purim after the Gzeira, when the Jews had everything going well for them, just like we have today going well for us in Harchava, Exhibit C. Even though those are different time periods, the truth is that all those time periods are relevant to our lives. Now, I'm saying this in a very suggestive way. The Maamer doesn't say it, it's the way I understand it. But to me, Matan Torah, when Hashem picks up the mountain over our head and says, like, if you don't accept the Torah, then I'm dropping this on you. To me, those are time periods in our lives when we almost have like a rock bottom. Or we have a reason to doing something. Like even with davening. I've been writing about davening, so I've been learning a lot. And in the beginning, I held very tightly onto a letter of the Rebbe where the Rebbe says that there's nothing that's better for the peace of mind, who's writing it to a woman, by the way, than davening. Which means in the beginning, I was like, if I want to have peace of mind, I need to daven. There was a reason, right? So, or, an example of, let's say, an addict. An addict has a rock bottom, and they come to a place in, let's say, a 12-step program, where if they don't live a spiritual life, then their choice is either be in their misery, in their addiction, or choose a spiritual life. So they choose a spiritual life because they hit a rock bottom, because it's the logical answer, but it's a reason. So I feel like early in the journey, it's like doing something because if not, what's going to happen? That thing will drop on my head. And I definitely experienced that in a number of areas, not just davening. It's like, what if I don't? You know? Like, logic itself is an external reason. Convincing my animal soul is in itself a reason. And transitioning, even, Mesiras Nefesh, this adrenaline, many people experience it after October 7th. So many stories of college campus, of Jews awakening, and it's beautiful. But that's also like something external made your Jewish spark pop out. That's part of the journey. It's not even always Mesiras Nefesh. The idea that the Rebbe is trying to get us at is there's all these external reasons to do it. And in the beginning of your journey, that's where you might be. What choice do I have? It's either God or, like the addiction or any other challenge that you have. It's if I lose my faith, then I'm going to be depressed, or I'm not going to be able to handle what I'm going through, where I'm choosing God for a reason that's external. And the Rebbe is saying, you have the ability, and it's greater, and you could reach the highest levels of essence, and coming to a place where I'm davening not because of a reason, but I'm davening because I genuinely want to have a closer relationship to Hashem. And the truth is, nothing's a mistake. It's not coincidence that in our generation, people are not living in survival anymore.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's not a coincidence that today we are living with so much awareness about our thoughts and feelings. Because the Rebbe is saying this is where the work is.
Yeah.
We're not living in survival era anymore. We're not living in Russia and communist Russia. We're living in America. And today most of people's pain is actually not external, it's internal. We're all turning inwards. And it's exciting, the potential that the Rebbe is telling us. This is the highest level possible, where you dig so deep. I don't know when this podcast will air, but we're coming off of Parshas Taldes. And in Parshas Taldes, we learn about Yitzchak digging wells, and Chassidus talks so much about it. Again, not just the story of Yitzchak digging wells, but what that represents. He dug it. It's the Avodah of Milmata Lamaila, which means from below. Not like love bombing or throwing inspiration at people. He himself dug, and that's what lasted. Avram's wells didn't last. Yitzchak's lasted, and this represents, I think in today's generation also, I know for me even, sometimes I ride on other people's inspiration. I listen to a good podcast, and the Rebbe is saying, even a podcast is just external. Make sure you're digging deep and making it yours. That's the only way it's going to last. Not because the system taught it to you. Not because even your favorite podcaster taught it to you. You worked with it. You got your psyche on board with your essence.
What does that mean to you, digging deep and making it yours? Like getting your psyche aligned with your essence. What does that mean?
First I contrast with what it doesn't look like. Like, I remember there were times in high school, for sure, where I did things to impress other people or because I wanted them to think of me a certain way. The contrast to that is really getting my entire self where I'm not doing it for any external reason or to impress anybody, and to really, 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 really have this open connection and relationship with Hashem where I really feel like I love Hashem. I really feel like I want more of his essence. And I think that we're talking about, what does it mean to get their psyche on board? It means not negating a part of myself in order to serve Hashem, bringing all of me into the picture. And it's a little bit like what we started with about using all the gifts Hashem gave us. Hashem within our psyche. It shouldn't be a contradiction, our modern 2024 world and Hashem. It's fused within it. It's I'm going swimming, I'm in nature, I'm one with Hashem's essence. And it's not like I could pinpoint when it happened or a time that it happened. But this Maamer has been such a guiding post for me to not negate those inner parts of me. And the Rebbe talks about it, like, when are we truly happy? When our conscious experience is aligned with our essence. Mm-hmm. It's maybe the reason why our souls are so uncomfortable is because we want more soul. We want more essence. We want deeper. So it's making us uncomfortable a little bit so that we'll search for it. And I agree with you that people today are searching. We're not satisfied with, don't give me Gan Eden. Don't give me your rewards. That's not what I'm after. It's not satisfactory enough reason for me to be here. Mm-hmm. Connecting to Hashem's essence, doing something for Him, that's satisfactory. Purpose, mission. So what does it look like for me? The conscious experience aligned with my essence. I want more of this yumminess. I want more of this goodness. The Rebbe talks about as long as there's one place in the world that doesn't have a revelation of Hashem's essence, that means it's not truly all revealed. Because when Hashem's essence will be fully revealed, it's good. There's not going to be any place that doesn't have Him. Mm-hmm. So it's this deep desire for Mashiach, not only because of an external reason again. We have plenty of external reasons for wanting Mashiach. We want Mashiach so that there's no more pain and that there's no more suffering and that we could see our loved ones. Valid. But it's also like serving Hashem for a reason. The Rebbe says, no, we're a new generation. We could want Mashiach because we just want to experience Hashem's essence in every single level. Hashem, I want more of you.
Yeah, I think people resonate with that. Like it's a pretty intuitive experience that people have. That description, like that, the way of saying it, of not being able to override the system. I think people instinctively have that experience of not really being able to override the system and wondering about that concept of sacrifice. It's definitely a theme that comes up all the time on the podcast, is about sacrifice in your Judaism and if it should be like the driving force. And I think that even if I think most people are like, whether it should or shouldn't be, like it can't be anymore. Like people feel that experience of like not being able to be the driving force, the sense of sacrifice. Something that comes up in this talk is also the idea that Moshe Rabbeinu is not mentioned in the parsha that the Rebbe is quoting, V'atah Tetzaveh, and you should be commanded. And obviously, this being the last talk that was distributed from the Rebbe in this way, you see the parallel there between Moshe's name not being mentioned and the Rebbe's loss in this world. And I think that there's like obviously so much connection there between experiencing leadership within our own self and being able to take that journey that you're describing, because another person, a tzaddik, a leader, can only take you so far. And that inner work that you're describing, we can only do that alone. Like no one else can walk that path for us.
That's how the Rebbe ends the Maamer. The Rebbe says that even though V'atah Tetzaveh B'nei Yisrael, which the Maamer translates as that the role and function of a leader is tetzaveh, not just from the word command, but to connect, right? That the role of a leader is to connect the Yidden to Hashem by revealing our essence. Even though that's the role of a leader, the Yikchu Eilecha, Shem and Zayzach, that the Jewish people brought Maisha, the olive oil, that represents we add something to Maisha that Maisha can't do.
Right.
Maisha gives us like the Nesinas Kayach, the ability. And then he says, go do it b'kayach atzmai, go do it on your own. Go do that kasas lama'ar, which in the pasuk is talking about crushing olives for olive oil. But in our conversation, it talks about crushing a dissatisfaction, a being unhappy with status quo and wanting to just reveal the essence. Mm-hmm. And the end of that pasuk of it being lahale snare tamid, that's what's everlasting. Only when it's with our inner work is it everlasting. It reminds me of a story that I read recently. There was a Jew, Rabbi Feiner, who came to the Rebbe, and he had gotten a bracha, I believe, from the Belzer Rebbe before he fought in the war that he would survive. And he did survive through a string of miracles. And a lot of soldiers were killed, and he saw a lot of soldiers killed. And after the war, this was the Russian army. After the war, he came to America, and he went from Rebbe to Rebbe to get a bracha. Mm-hmm. He went to the Kleisenberger Rebbe, and he went to Satmar, and he came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He shared his experiences, and then he asked for a bracha. Mm-hmm. And the Rebbe didn't give him a bracha. He said, I'll mention you at my father-in-law's tzion. And he wanted a bracha. So he thought he would trick the Rebbe, so he starts benching the Rebbe, hoping that the Rebbe will have no choice but to bench him back. And the Rebbe didn't give him a bracha, and the Rebbe said to him, you don't believe in Hashem. You're trying to just believe in my bracha. And the Rebbe says, how do I know this? Because you just told me an entire story of how you survived the war without saying Baruch Hashem once. And the Rebbe said to him, in Russia it was dangerous to mention God, but here it's not dangerous. And I feel like that story is symbolic of like, we want the Rebbe to give us the bracha, almost like to do the work for us. And the Rebbe's like, that cannot be a replacement for you believing in Hashem. The Rebbe told him, go learn Chayves Alvavais. Go develop your own connection to Hashem. With the Rebbe's help, with the Rebbe revealing our essence, with the Rebbe showing us and believing in us who we really are. The Rebbe says, Chassidim, I believe you guys are deep. You guys are the real deal. You're not going to fall for just a Judaism that's externally motivated. You're not going to fall just for a Judaism that's to please, or just because of a logical reason, or even just for reward and punishment. I know that you could want essence, and you see this thirst in today's generation. You see it. People are thirsty. People want more and more and more and more. What do they want more of? So on an external level, it might look like they want stuff. But on a deeper level, we want essence. We're not satisfied with external explanation, with platitudes.
What do you mean it looks like people want stuff? And what they really want is essence?
I just saw a meme, after the entire country celebrated Thanksgiving and thank God for all the stuff they have, the next day they replaced all their stuff on Black Friday. We live in a world which could look like people are searching for commercialized things, for more physical things. Nothing's ever really good enough. And on an external level, nothing is really good enough. We need another fix. We need more. But when you dig deep, there's something soulful going on. We want depth. We want essence. We want Hashem's essence. We want more than a superficial Judaism. We want to really feel it. In other words, sometimes we're afraid to take our spirituality seriously. It's almost like, is it even socially acceptable for us to really talk about having Avas Hashem? Like my human heart could love Hashem? And the Rebbe saying, yes, you could take this so seriously. The same way you love a child, you could love Hashem.
So that's a shift that I feel that I'm seeing, not that it's socially acceptable, but that it's socially laudable to be spiritually connected, and that it's definitely something that we see as a currency today more than the material world, where like people appreciate it, which I think is part of this shift and this experience, which is that as we shift towards Mashiach and as spirituality becomes something that's more and more real to us, we become like more socially interested in spirituality than we are in physical things. That's where I think that like this generation actually wants more and more essence, authenticity, vulnerability, depth, connection, and less stuff. And, like people are more immune to that chase of like those physical highs because they're searching for something that's so much more authentic and real. And even though we see it mirrored obviously in a secular world too, and those things are happening on both planes, you do see that when it's channeled towards godliness, it's this like very deep, constant search to be more connected to Hashem, more integrated in your godliness.
I just want to say that you have a part in it. You normalizing these conversations on human and holy, this is Mashiach-dik. This is Geula-dik. This is what the Rebbe is saying. The Rebbe is saying, your pretty house, you can infuse that with godliness. This is our Avodah. this is where we're at right now.
For sure.
So I encourage and applaud. I'm like so in awe of everything that you're doing. And the fact that this is exactly it, that Judaism is not negating our experience. It's literally, we're aligning. We're aligning, our inner and our outers are matching. Mm-hmm. Because it's very common for people, and people talk about it, where on the outside they might be doing all the right stuff, but their inner world and their outer world are not matching.
Yeah.
And this is all about aligning our inner and our outer worlds. That my inner experience, like if you looked inside of me, if I was brutally honest with you, you would find inside of me literally a desire to love Hashem.
Mm-hmm. Right. Like if all the masks fell away, what would you find beneath it?
And even though you're right that it's shifted more to spirituality, but I still think, your podcast name is Human and Holy. Sometimes we have very human desires. And it's freeing to recognize that even sometimes when it feels like we're desiring something physical, if we dig deeper, we can find that spiritual desire within it.
Nice. Yeah, that's beautiful. That like sometimes there is that desire for more, for something that that's not ultimately going to fill you, and like look beneath it to see what's actually going on.
What do you really want?
Yeah. I'm curious to know from you, because obviously when we go down this theme and this idea of really integrating our Judaism into every single part of who we are and really like wanting God as a person, like I think that what the Rebbe seems to be suggesting to me is that like I want to keep Shabbos, not because someone told me to or because it's the right thing to do, but because like this is like my definition of rest is Shabbos. Like we see that as like a new agey, selfish way of looking at our Judaism, but we really see it's actually like the highest level of Judaism is that I love Shabbos as a person. Like if my children like woke me up in the middle of the night and was like, what's your favorite day of the week? And I'm not trying to educate them. That's what would come forth is that
Amazing.
Like I love Shabbos,
Amazing.
Right? That's the idea.
That's like the children's book. You took a high concept and you brought it down. You brought this Shabbos, which is like this holy spiritual thing, and you're so one with it that Tanya loves it. Yeah.
Oh, I was like talking about it in theoretical, but I also do love Shabbos.
Oh, okay. But
I love it. I was like, you're like, oh my gosh, you're so special. And I'm like, wait, me? I was talking in the theoretical, but I do love Shabbos. And I think we all do, right? Hopefully.
That also was a journey for me.
Yeah.
Like coming to love, coming to get our inner experience to really be aligned with it. Yeah. That we should love, we love this way of life. Yeah. We can't do a Judaism that's because mommy told me anymore. Mm-hmm. We can't.
So what about those areas that you don't like? I think that like, or that you don't feel integrated with. Where does, I do think like Mashiach's time is shifting away from that sacrifice of overriding the system in order to serve Hashem, but like really finding integration with Torah and mitzvahs. What do we do when there are pieces of ourselves or of our lives that we feel like, in order to do this mitzvah, I have to override the system. There's no way for me to do it in an integrated way.
So first of all, I think it's important to know where we want to get to, even if we're not there. Even if I know the ideal, now how could I get there? So the ideal is that my entire self is in sync and aligned with my essence. So now what do I do if there's a part of me that's not? So the first thing is I want to know that it's a goal. Mm-hmm. I want to get myself to love it. And I think that sometimes it takes creativity. Like for someone who doesn't love Shabbos, what could you do to get yourself to love it? For someone who doesn't enjoy the experience of a certain mitzvah, like we're not saying stop doing it till you love it. We're saying we have this ideal to get my heart on board, and it also means like follow the things that I love. You love cooking, go cook for Bikur Chaylim. Like express your Judaism in the way that feels so that sets you on fire. Mm-hmm. Like do the things that you love to do aligned with Hashem. Yeah. Find a way to express your Yiddishkeit. And even think about the fact that the Rebbe told us to make beautiful mikvahs. Mikvah could be a very hard mitzvah.
Right.
And the Rebbe said, make it beautiful. Make it an experience that like you're going to look forward to the spa night. Right? In Russia, they broke the ice. to go to the mikvah.
Yeah.
And today we're saying, make it beautiful. Make it just like it was in the Beis HaMikdash when Hashem's essence was expressed there. It was beautiful. Make your Yiddishkeit beautiful. Oftentimes, the challenges could have a remedy if we get a little bit creative, get a little bit extra help. Do something that, reach out for support. Sometimes, talking about mikvah, I know somebody who one of her challenges was that she was scared of water and going underwater, and just learning how to blow bubbles and not be so afraid of water helped her with the mitzvah. So I think sometimes it does require, but you have to want it. You have to even know it's an option. You have to even know it's a goal, b'kayach atzmai, to dig deep and find that real deep connection to Hashem.
You also have to be in touch with yourself. Even just describing a woman who's afraid of the water, I think even just saying I'm afraid of water and that matters. My fear when I go into the mikvah matters. And so therefore I'm going to find a way to be able to experience the mikvah without experiencing fear, instead of just saying you got to do what you got to do and you'll be terrified the whole way through and you'll just do it anyways because this is the right thing to do. It's this is the right thing to do and I'm terrified and my fear is significant and it's preventing me from connecting to Hashem in this mitzvah. So then she learned how to navigate her fear around that. Something else that what you were describing reminded me of was this concept of romanticizing our lives. It's something that comes up online, romanticize your life, light a candle when you're brushing your teeth, do things like that. And at an integration week like a Farbrengen, after one of the chapters of Tanya, a woman was talking about romanticizing mitzvos and having that experience. You want to study Torah, light a candle when you're studying Torah. You want to say brachos in the morning, create a ritual around it that's beautiful and romantic and enhance it so that you can experience that delight in your Yiddishkeit, which is these are the moments where I find peace and reprieve in my day and in my life. So and
that's what davening has become for me.
That's what
when I
don't
daven, I miss it. It's I want my time with Hashem.
Right.
I never thought I would be that girl.
Right.
Because I didn't have patience. But it's a journey. And I do want to say something though. What about you tried to be creative, you tried to come up with ways you love it, and it's still hard. I think then we could fall to choosing to do it with love. In Chassidus, we talk about the concept of there are two types of serving Hashem. There's serving Hashem like a servant, like a slave, doing it because you have to, versus serving Hashem like a child, who does it out of love. And Chassidus explains that you could even serve God like a slave with the love of a son. In other words, let's say it's hard and you can't get yourself to love it. You could still say, Hashem, I love you and I'm doing it for you. The same way, not everything we do for our children do we love, right? There's a lot of unglorious thing about being a mother, being a wife, running a home. And yet we could have enough love in our hearts for the people we're doing it for that it's not negate it and override the system. It's, yes, sometimes we do things that are uncomfortable, but overpowered with so much love anyway. And I just want to leave room for that because, it sounds very beautiful and idealistic and get yourself to love it. There might be some challenges, and I'm not thinking of anything specific, but there might be some things that you can't overcome.
Or it's a long process and right now you don't. And
so you could still have the general love for Hashem that will carry you through that.
Right. I think I 100% agree with you, and there has to be that caveat for sure if you're in that space, and also to know that there's going to be parts of our life that are just hard to do. I do think that people are usually more okay with suffering than not. Our instinct is to be okay with suffering in our lives and to become accustomed to it. And I think for a lot of people in their Judaism too, we become accustomed to suffering, to being unhappy, to resenting mitzvos, and we just become accustomed to it. So I don't know if we really...
It's a tragedy of epic proportions.
So that's what I don't know if the struggle is that people are have too high of an expectation of their Judaism. I think people have a very low expectation of loving their Judaism more often than not, where they're just this is the right thing to do and this is what I have to do. And
do you think even today people still want to be martyrs? You think it's still a thing, or we've evolved so much?
Do people have strong voices of martyrdom in their head? 100%. It's a Yetzer Hara, I believe, of our generation, but 100%, because as we're shifting from the generation of self-sacrifice to this generation of integration and experiencing etzem at every level of who we are, there is a certain shedding that takes place, and there's certain messaging that is still in your system that you have to get rid of. So I do think that people experience those voices. Not that they see it as like an idealistic, like, oh, I really want to be, like sacrificing everything, but that there's still that messaging in our culture and in our system.
So
like
our
physical
I'll tell you
system.
what I think though. I do believe that we have to be careful with the language, and I want to clarify something. I'm not saying never go outside your comfort zone. We're not saying only do it if you love it, or, I could see where people could say like, oh, so only if it feels good you could do it. Like it could become like a self-serving Judaism. The emphasis is still on Hashem serving, which means sometimes something could be hard. This isn't about serving myself and not extending myself to other people, or not having Mesiras Nefesh, or not having, going past my comfort zone to have guests or to help someone else. Our emphasis is on Hashem. But if I would ask my essence what it wants in the moment, and I would ask my heart and soul what it would want in the moment, we're trying to get them aligned.
Yeah.
So which means if my essence believes that right now it's time for me to just spend time in my family or to take care of myself, then my heart and mind is aligned to that. But if my essence believes that right now Hashem wants me to do the mitzvah and to host and to have guests, then my heart and mind will get on board with that. I just don't want to make it sound like, oh, this is like the easy way out Yiddishkeit. It's not the easy way out Yiddishkeit. It's getting my animal soul on board Yiddishkeit. So if I want to have guests, and I believe that my neshama wants to have guests, but I'm not interested in cooking, I can go buy the food. We're not saying not to do the mitzvah. We're saying figure out how to do the mitzvah in a way that's joyful, in a way that doesn't leave you resentful, like you said. But not to not do it. We're not saying, just do what floats your boat. I think that sometimes the message could be misunderstood. We're not saying to do less of Hashem's will. We're saying to do more of Hashem's will and just be on board with it. It shouldn't be this internal friction. I'm doing something, but if we're constantly at war with ourselves, that's when we get so tired. We can't keep fighting it. That's exhausting. It's exhausting to be at war with yourself.
Yeah.
And the Rebbe wants us to be at peace. It's not a war, right? This whole peda b'shalom nafshi, which is such a basic concept in Chassidic, making harmony between body and soul, making harmony between our actual conscious experience and what Hashem wants, but not forgetting what Hashem wants.
Yeah, I'm curious to know why your instinct was, it's like, oh, I don't want people to think that like this is about being selfish. Like when we talk about like experiencing etzem, which is godliness, like our godly will to be connected to Hashem at every level of ourselves, I often hear that like fear crop up, which is like, don't think that we're talking about being selfish. Like, why did that come up for you just now?
Specifically when you're talking about not being a martyr, just because I've had these conversations before.
Yeah, no, I'm genuinely curious.
And people misinterpret it all the time as, oh, if you're saying not to be a martyr, you're never going to have guests again. I'm like, no. We're not saying, don't be a martyr doesn't equal, don't do the thing. Don't be a martyr equals, don't do it resentfully. Because ultimately, when you're doing it resentfully, the person can't even appreciate it. They feel that energy. We want to do things from a place of love. We want to do things from a place of appreciation. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about our kaiches hagluyim, our revealed experience should be aligned with our etzem. So I'm not worried theoretically. I'm not worried even. I do feel the need to clarify it because I do think sometimes people hear what they want to hear. And so I'm spelling it out. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this.
Yeah, I think definitely when we're talking about etzem being revealed, which is like a person's literal essence being revealed on all levels, then I think there's a clear understanding that it's like that we're speaking about the godly will. But obviously, it can also be tricky because the description of hosting is a perfect example of someone is like a mother of small children, or it causes like, struggles in her marriage or whatever it is. And she feels like this is too much. But then she has this voice that tells her like, no, this is the godly will, is that you should have people for Shabbos. And maybe there's like another part of her that says like, actually, I deeply feel that this is not what my family needs. So she could have a very strong voice in her head that tells her that that's selfish, but we could also very clearly see that that is probably the right choice for her in that moment. So even that, like, we weaponize selfishness within ourselves too. You know, like even when it comes to davening, you could tell yourself like, that's selfish. If you're davening at a time when you could be helping someone else and you're davening because like, do you see what I'm saying? Like,
I think in general, we're notorious for weaponizing beautiful spiritual concepts against ourselves. I don't mean me and you. I mean the general as a concept. Spirituality is holy. It's meant to uplift us. We're not meant to be using it to beat ourselves up.
Yeah.
That, you know, and, you know, the example that you gave is so real and it's so relatable. And it's so interesting because often the biggest conflicts are not between right and wrong.
Yeah, no.
We know what's right and wrong. It's between right and right.
Mm-hmm.
It's between this value and this value. The questions I ask my mishpia most often are not right and wrong.
Yeah.
It's what's more important.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you that often when we listen to our essence, we know the answer.
Yeah.
And I also agree with you that it's important to not second guess that or beat ourselves over that. And love the fact that, you know, part of embracing our roles as women, as mothers, as wives, is embracing that sometimes that will be the priority at the expense of some other beautiful value that we can't do right now.
Right.
Right? Chana didn't go to the Mishkan, which is a beautiful spiritual value.
Yeah.
To stay home and nurse her child. Mm-hmm. She could have had nevuah.
Right.
She stayed home.
Right.
Because it was one spiritual thing against another spiritual thing. And we know Torah teaches us the story because Torah is telling us she did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're feeling guilty, it's your permission to prioritize doing what Hashem wants on a very deep level and really experiencing, I want to do Hashem's will.
Mm-hmm. Something that you mentioned before was about a woman using her love for cooking to do Bikur Cholam. Obviously, that's like a very like
I meant like
simple,
to cook meals for Bikur Cholam family.
Yeah, that's what I understood it as. And I think part of this idea of like really expressing our essence at every level of who we are is leaning into that like individual gifts that each person has.
Totally.
And you've obviously done that. That's obviously something that's been like a priority in your life and that you're doing. Obviously, it's a lifelong work. I'm curious what your advice would be to anyone who does feel like, you know, I have maybe an interest in writing a children's book or in expressing my gifts in a certain way or writing any book or teaching or giving, but I feel held back because it feels indulgent very often. In order to get to that place, there's actually a lot of process that comes into play. And this whole process of like revealing essence isn't so linear. It isn't like, oh, so I'm going to like make that decision and 2 minutes later it's going to be expressed in every pore. So when beginning that journey, let's say like a person wants to express a certain talent and they never have, and they've never invested in themselves in that way. And so what's your recommendation to like beginning that process and that journey and like how to speak to yourself about the indulgence almost of the time invested in yourself and in your own development in order to experience your essence in this way that you're describing?
I remember when I had my first baby, he was a few months old. I'm laughing. I wanted to go to Prospect Park so badly, and I didn't have time.
Oh my God.
I didn't have time to go to Prospect Park. Now I don't have time not to go to Prospect Park. And I have 4 kids, thank God.
That's really deep.
When you see that this is part of your neshama's calling, it needs to express itself. And I want to tell you something that I'm grateful that these things are more normalized. Like I remember as a kid writing a poem and getting made fun of for it. It's like a poem about sunset. I'm so grateful that like it's a normal thing to do.
Right.
I'm so grateful because there's so many different ways. Like Yiddishkeit doesn't look the same for everybody. Hashem gave us unique insights. Hashem wants each of us to connect to Hashem in our own unique ways. So like we don't have time not to. We don't have the luxury not to. Hashem wants us to.
That's good.
And you know, it's so interesting also because the Rebbe talks about it in the Maamer that when we live this type of avodah, of bringing Hashem into our conscious experience and not overriding the system, like you said, it also impacts our Avos Yisrael. And the Rebbe says, like, you know, in the Tanya, when the Alter Rebbe teaches about Avos Yisrael, he does the like negate the body, just look at the soul. And the Alter Rebbe's Perek Lamed Beis of Tani, it's foundational, right? Why should you love another Jew? Because if I prioritize my soul and I identify with my soul over my body, I will be able to identify you by your soul. And so I could look past people's externals and just love them soul to soul. The Rebbe says there's a deeper level to Avas Yisrael. Not just loving someone, I'm a soul, you're a soul. You're negating your feeling. You might feel annoyed at them. You might not like them.
Right.
The Rebbe says it's so much greater when if your essence permeates your conscious experience, you learn how to love the other person, not just because they're a soul, but their guf. The way their soul expresses itself consciously, it's a much deeper level of Avos Yisrael. And you see that, like when you see people accepting each other for their differences, it's not just because, okay, I'll tolerate them because they're a soul. I'm going to learn to even love their idiosyncrasies that I think they have.
Right.
I'm going to learn to love even their external expressions that are different than me. I'll be able to sit at the table with someone who has a different opinion in politics than me. Not just, oh, they're a soul, I'm a soul. We want an embodied experience.
Right.
Soul embodies. And that's a deeper level of loving our fellow Jew. Not just because of their soul. Their soul in their body.
Nice. Yeah. Not like overriding their bodies, because ultimately, like, that's not really a full love. If you have to, like, basically negate who that person is as a person in order to love them.
And not overriding our resistance to it.
Right.
Working with our system, getting ourselves to like that other person, despite the way they're presenting themselves.
Right. Yeah. And get to know them in a deeper way so that we have that. I think that gives us more allowance and generosity in appreciating their idiosyncrasies or whatever it is that's specifically, like, preventing us from appreciating them.
Appreciating that there are different creatures in the world and different people look different and dress different and act different.
Yeah.
Not just they're a soul in a body, and that's beautiful.
Right.
And really this is living geula. When we're living like this essence life that years ago they thought was only available when Mashiach, would come. It's available now to desire this. Again, we don't have it completely until Mashiach comes, because essence completely revealed will be everywhere, but it's available to us now to live this really deep life, really essence-based life, to be like, to like, the Rebbe almost like the description of it is like to be crushed that I don't have essence. Usually when I think of my disappointment, I think of, for a little kid, it's their ice cream fell on the floor. For an adult, it's they lost a business deal. Could I really feel disappointed that I don't have a deep enough connection to Hashem?
Right.
I could.
Yeah.
I could really feel like, the distance bothers me. God, I just want to be close to you. I just want to have, you're talking about romanticizing a mitzvah, romanticizing our relationship with Hashem.
Yeah.
Having a passionate, real experience of a relationship with Hashem, like the love between a husband and a wife. It's not theoretical that was the mashal given. The whole love between a husband and a wife is only a mashal for our relationship with Hashem.
Do you experience that love with Hashem?
I do.
Yeah? What does it feel like?
First of all, I think that part of that also has to do with, by nature, I'm a passionate person. So if somebody feels like they're not that gushy, passionate person and they don't feel passionate love for Hashem, they could feel a little love for Hashem. But for me, learning Tanya is really what helped me. Like the Alter Rebbe literally spells out how to come to loving Hashem. It's not like, people who meditate in a forest. Like the easiest level of Avos Hashem that I even try to meditate about, like if I'm walking to school. The Alter Rebbe says, every single one of us could have Avas Eilam, love of the world. What does that mean? You already have the capacity to love. Anyone who's watching this right now, there's something or someone that you love. You love a family member, a friend, music, food. And the Alter Rebbe says, think about the thing that you love and then transfer that to the source. Who gave you that? I have a child that I love so much, 4 children that I love so much. I could easily transfer that to Hashem. That love that already exists inside of me. I could literally love Hashem with that same exploding love for giving me that thing. He's the source of it. And so I think that Chabad Chassidus is full of meditations, how to come to experience this love of Hashem. And we want to normalize that. Normalize feeling at one with our essence. And normalize getting our very human physical heart to be filled with love of Hashem. Normalize thinking in a way that our neshama would think. Thinking in a way that our essence would think. Our essence is the essence of all of us. Normalize, back to the mashal of, let's say, the dog, where the neshama says, I can't become a dog because I'm not. So, right, I can't disconnect from Hashem because I am Hashem. So in a level of Mesiras Nefesh, that would mean giving up your life. But in a level of day-to-day life, it's getting in touch with the part of me that I can't be separated from Hashem for even 1 minute. And when I feel temptation to do something that might separate me from Hashem, dialing in to that feeling of essence of like, I don't want to be disconnected from Hashem for even 1 second.
Right.
So you could hear voices, kind of like backseat driver voices. And you could still have your conscious thought and your conscious experience be aligned to I'm a piece of Hashem. I can't be disconnected. As much as I'm a person and can't convert to a dog, I'm literally a piece of Hashem, and I have this essential connection to Him, and I can tap into it and draw down such a great level. And just like the same way you bring down a concept to a child, I could bring it, it's almost like I'm the child. I'm, talk about inner child. I'm the little child that I'm bringing Hashem to.
Right.
Into my thoughts, into my feelings, to my experience.
I love that you brought in Avasalam, because I think that that's such an accessible way to begin to access love of God. Loving the person that gave you the things that you already love. Yeah. Or loving the creator. I don't know if the person is really the right way to say it, but
the creator.
One, loving the one.
I mean, it could even be a sunset.
Yeah. Or the world, the beauty of the world.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You feel that whoa? And the truth is, the Alter Rebbe says, this also could also give us yira. This also could give us awe, right? That same sunset could be awe-inspiring, and it could be like, whoa.
So I want to close with speaking about this concept of having a leader, because I think that right now it does feel somewhat in the world like we're leaderless. And you see this call for individuals, and you see how people are rising to the occasion of being leaders of themselves, leaders of their families, leaders of their homes in so many different ways. And I'm curious to know what your perspective is on these like closing words of the Rebbe and his message of like, you have to go inward to reveal the essence in every single part of who you are. And ultimately, like, we don't have this like physical presence of a leader to guide us, lead us, answer our like direct questions. What is your interpretation of like what that practically looks like for all people? Like just anyone who has like lost their leader or their gadol or their Rebbe, like what do you think the call to action is, or the invitation?
So it's interesting. I think it was Rabbi Jonathan Sachs who said that the Rebbe didn't create followers, he created leaders. And I think that the Rebbe's closing words really encapsulate it, because in my experience, it's not that we're leaderless. In the V'atah Tetzaveh, it's like Moshe does the first part, and then you take it from there. The Rebbe reveals our essence. The Rebbe, through hours and hours and talks for bring-ins, showed us who we really are, holds a mirror to us. And the reason why I say it in present tense also is like, go to the Ayel at any hour of the day and night, and you'll see Jews from all walks of life there.
Yeah.
The Rebbe's leadership is very present, is very accessible. Watching a video of the Rebbe, learning his Torah, he's guiding us. I feel like, the connection to the Rebbe is so strong even after Gimel Tammuz. As much as it was like it was a shock to people, and people thought that would be the end of Lubavitch, you see this stronger connection to the Rebbe. We need the Rebbe now more than ever, and Part 2, the Rebbe gives us that Nesinas Kayach. He shows us who we really are. He shows us that he believes in us. We connect to his teachings. We learn his Torah. And then let's see what you can make out of it. It's like, any skill that you learn an art skill, now go make your own painting. Go be creative on your own. And to me, that's what it is. It's the job of a Rebbe is still to reveal our essence. This has been the role of a leader since Moshe Rabbeinu, to reveal our essence, to help us have an internalized faith, whether it was Mordechai or any other leader of the Jewish people. And I think it was always spiritual, and that level of spirituality is still here for us. And the guidance and the leadership and the whole way, how do I align my psyche with what Hashem wants? Who teaches me what that looks like? The Rebbe. The Rebbe is the ultimate role model for me personally. When I hear the Rebbe's voice, it's comforting to my neshama. It feels like I'm feeding my soul. And the Rebbe is still, in the Maamer, it talks about such a beautiful mashal. The Rebbe, the job of a leader is to be a faithful shepherd.
Yeah.
To feed us faith. And then, go light your own fire.
Yeah.
Go dig deep within yourself. Go take all that the Rebbe taught us and figure out with your own creativity how to use that and express that.
Yeah.
But it goes together. It's the Rebbe's, the Rebbe's Maamer on what is a Rebbe. The Rebbe's saying to me, I'm not leaving you. I'm still going to be here guiding you. But you know what you're going to do more? You're going to do more of the second part. You're going to do more of the Kayach Atzmai, which is the digging your own well. And you're going to do more of believing that you have the water inside of you. You don't dig somewhere if you don't believe there's going to be water. You're going to do more of believing that inside every single one of you, they say God doesn't make no junk. No one's junk. You have water, you have beauty, you have essence, and you're not going to give up until you find that connection. And no matter what you're going through, and externally it might seem like everything we're talking about is literally the opposite of your experience, you could dig deeper. No matter what you're going through, you have a leader that believes every single one of us are capable of this experience.
There's no question that because a tzaddik's life is defined by their soul, that it doesn't end after they physically pass, and you definitely see that the connection to a tzaddik can continue far after its life. I do think that there's obviously a strong difference in the way that we connect to a tzaddik after their physical life, and I know that that's controversial for some, but to me that's obvious. I think that the Rebbe was the Rebbe was trying to draw our attention to that for so long. And I know a lot of people who are who never met the Rebbe, a similar age group to me, who feel this intuitively too, which is nobody notices that this was kind of the message that you have to do this on your own, that even that whole even just seeing that I am going to constantly have to, I don't know, it's hard to say without being extremely sacrilegious, but the whole messaging of but still it's exactly the same, but also you have to be.
It's not exactly the same.
It's not. I think it's not, and not only not, but I think that the Rebbe was very much trying to send that message of it's not the same, and this is you, as you said, you have to dig the well, and you have to bring Mashiach. No one can, the Rebbe cannot raise the entire collective consciousness on his own, and I think no tzaddik can. The Rebbe could awaken something inside of the people.
And that's what he's saying. V'yikhu elecha. The Yidden give something to Moshe that Moshe can't do.
Yeah.
But the first step is we need Moshe. So that's the only part I was highlighting, that we need Moshe. Moshe starts us off, and then he can't do it. He needs us. V'yikhu elecha. V'yikhu elecha symbolizes this avodah of, you guys got to do this. Right? And the example that it gives is in a body, there's a head and a foot. The head can't get to where it wants to get without the foot. No leader can bring Mashiach on his own. We're the feet, so to speak. We are getting the Rebbe where he wanted to be. We're getting this world prepared and geulatik, and you're spreading this in the entire, the whole universe, this messages that we're giving out, and you're so right. It's definitely different. I was just highlighting, though, that the Rebbe was telling us part 1 is V'atah Tetzaveh, and now go do part 2. Right. Go do v'yikchoelecha.
Yeah.
Go bring something to Maisha that Maisha can't do on his own.
100%. And I do still think that like the Rebbe's teachings can awaken us, and definitely now more than ever it feels like so relevant. The Rebbe's teachings and like messages for the world. Like you can understand how like the Rebbe's voice is this healing and wise voice that can lead us towards the next stage of the world without a question. It's not that I don't think that the Rebbe's voice is extremely relevant in today's day and age. It's simply that I think it's important that we don't hyperfixate on like just trying to like recreate what was, and instead really look at what the Rebbe is saying, which is what he was asking. Like if we want to be truly awoken by the Rebbe's voice, we look at the Rebbe's words and that tell us to like, it's your turn now to like take the essence of your soul and express it in every single part of your psyche, consciousness, life, experience, because that revelation is what's going to bring Mashiach.
Right. And in other words, I think what you're saying is that, it's not about nostalgia about the past. It's futuristic. Totally. It's now. It's right now. We can do something even greater. And I think I see it. I see now there are girls who you mentioned not seeing the Rebbe. I still have $1 from the Rebbe. So in that sense, we're really different generation. Totally. And you see that the younger generation has like an even deeper connection to the Rebbe, has an even deeper connection. And that too is part of this like, squeezing of the olive oil, like this yearning, this desire for this deep connection. It's all part of it. It's all part of the desire for depth, the desire to do it on our, to awaken on our own. It was so much easier back then. Chassidim could ride on the Rebbe's inspiration. We were talking about before about not riding. They could kind of almost like ride on just going to dollars, going to Farbrengens. Like that could have been their whole Chassidischkeit.
But it actually sounds harder to me. Like as a post Gimel Tammuz person, Chassid, to me that sounds harder because like I was programmed so differently that like whole like riding and just like being absorbed and like sent out, like that to me is counterintuitive.
Yeah, but that's like saying Mesiras Nefesh seems harder than today.
Yeah, because
it does seem harder, and the Rebbe is saying, no, this is harder.
No, it's harder because it's also like it doesn't fit our system. Like it's harder because like it's not right for you.
Correct.
So yeah, it's harder because it's just like I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Because it's just like it's not how I was built.
It's just so not.
Yeah.
It's just so not the call of the hour.
Exactly. So like it feels like off.
Right.
Even though it's so holy and gorgeous. Like I don't, yeah.
The call of the hour is v'yikchoelecha. Bring something that Maisha can too. The call of the hour is get your own psyche aligned with your essence of your soul.
Yeah.
And draw down this like essence, great light into like your everyday life.
Right. Yeah. The call of the hour is bring yourself. Literally.
Bring every part of yourself.
Yeah.
On board.
Yeah.
With your essence.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This was great. Good talk.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming.
I appreciate you trusting all of us to really relate to this. I appreciate you relying almost like on what the Rebbe says and trusting that this is something people want to listen to and experience in their lives too.
Totally. You asked me before we got on, you were like, why do you want to talk about this Maamer? Like, what is it about this that's like calling you? To me, there's the answer to our soul's calling right now. I think that this is the answer to what our soul is calling us to do at this moment in time, and like really seeing that encouragement as that like this is like the next step. This is like seeing it so clearly is extremely powerful to like have that from the words of a tzaddik.
Yeah. And it, just to sum it up for myself even, where we're trying to get to a place where we're not serving Hashem for any external reasons, but I'm coming to this, it's from me, from within me.
It's pneumius.
It's pneumius, it's internal. I'm desiring it not because it was superimposed on me.
Yeah.
And not because it was even superimposed by my own neshama that came and took over.
Exactly.
But that my entire being is choosing, uvacharta, b'chaim, is choosing to live and love this life.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you said that, like, even my own soul is not overriding, because there's like voices from the past, but then there's like even our own self being able to override ourselves, like shut off other parts of ourselves, but saying like, no, like the call, like the bringing us to Mashiach means like awaken. I always say, like, when I just had a class that was about chapter 5 of Tanya. And I'm like, I always say this about like being present with Hashem. I'm like, wake up your questions. Like, don't leave your questions at the door. Like, our instinct is exactly that. Like, when I enter into a spiritual space, I shut off certain parts of myself. I shut off doubts. I shut off questions. But like, this is the time for those doubts and those questions to be arisen. And I think the same thing is true now in our Yiddishkeit and in the time of the world, is like, this is the time for your questions, for every part of who you are to like be awoken and arisen and to be processed.
100%.
Because this is our pathway to Mashiach.
Yeah, but that's what we mean. When I'm saying our minds aligned with Hashem, I mean your logic. You should logically come to a place. And if you have questions or something that's getting in the way, then your psyche is not aligned to your essence.
Totally.
You have to ask. That is the work.
Yeah.
The work is to get your own brain to logically think the same way your essence thinks.
Yeah.
I love that you say that. It's like, that's it. That's the work.
Yeah. But the same thing is true with your talents. Like, this is not the right talent for a Jewish woman to have. Then you see like this whole booming Jewish industry of women singing. It's like a new thing. To me, it's Mashiach times. Like, clearly. It's just like, that was never a good talent for a Jewish woman to have. You could easily shove that under the rug.
Even art was looked at very suspiciously. I mean, the Rebbe was one of the, biggest supporters. Like, Baruch Nashan has stories, and Michal Machlik has stories. Like, people thought that art was like not Jewish 100 years ago.
Interesting.
There was always Judaica.
Yeah.
There was like Jewish silver, but like fine art, it's very recently become a thing. And the Rebbe's like, yes, this is part of bringing Mashiach. This is part of a Gzeira Tzachtainim. Bring Hashem into art.
But like historically, art has been a part of the
Absolutely.
Jewish people. Yeah.
Back to the base of Mikdash times.
Exactly.
When Hashem, essence was expressed.
Exactly. We're just going back to our roots.
That's
it's
what
about
we want.
time.
The third base of Mikdash.
Yeah, there you go. Look at all our scholars. They used to be poets and writers and Talmidei Chachamim, singers,
Take a look at your Kippur davening.
Prophets. Exactly. There you go. So 100%, we're just going back to our source. This is Mashiach times. Honestly, I'm glad to be living in it. Right?
Yes.
No better generation to be a part of.
Absolutely.
We're doing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you
This
so
was
much for
good.
having me.
Yeah. Thank you.
I hope you loved today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. It was such a joy. New episodes of the podcast come out every single Sunday on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to the podcast. If you loved it, feel free to leave us a rating or a review. Subscribe to us so you don't miss a single episode. We are so grateful to you for being a part of this community. If you would like to sponsor an episode of the podcast and help us bring our work into the world, visit our website, humanandholy.com. Email us at info@humanandholy.com to find out about sponsorship opportunities if you want to sponsor for a specific date and dedicate it to someone, or if you are a brand that feels aligned with the work that we are doing, reach out to us and let's see if we can make some magic together. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and I'll see you next week.